A movie about a guy who wants to kill all of his kids. I mean, let's just be real, that's just parenthood sometimes, isn't it? The Last Son is brought to us by director Tim Sutton and stars Sam Worthington, Heather Graham, Thomas Jane, and Colson Baker. An outlaw attempts to end his evil family line. Really, IMDb? That's the best you got? So The Last Son is basically about this guy in the Old West played by Sam Worthington. And he's not really the best human being around. The guy goes around whoring a lot and just doing all kinds of deplorable behavior. We don't really know exactly what that deplorable behavior is, but we are told that he's not a very good guy. And at some point in time in his life, I think it's like an Apache chieftain or something like that, I can't remember, some type of Native American somebody puts a curse on him and tells him, you will die by the hand of your own seed. And since Isaac, which by the way that's the name of the character that Sam Worthington plays in this movie, has slept with pretty much every whore in the West, he's got a whole bunch of kids out there. So he sets out on a journey to kill all of his sons so that they can't grow up and come back to kill him. And he just about succeeds, but there's one more left. One last son. And this last son is played by Colson Baker, aka Machine Gun Kelly. And more on that in a minute. Now while all of Isaac's other children have been fairly normal guys, like one of them's like a stable hand and he kills him and the guy's just like, why did you do this? He says, you existed. You know, they've been pretty easy targets. However, Cal, played by Colson Baker, his last son, is not so easy to take down. You see, Cal's had a pretty hard life and apparently he became an outlaw. And not just any outlaw, he's like a pretty deplorable human being himself. He's robbing banks, he's killing a troop of army guys and taking their Gatling gun and just going around murdering people and just not a very good young man. And he's also got a pretty unhealthy relationship with his mother, played by Heather Graham. And when I say pretty unhealthy, I mean, yeah, like, it's a pretty uncomfortable relationship that most people, pretty much all people, are probably gonna say, that's not okay. I think you get the idea. Cal is not okay. When Isaac comes to Cal's mother, Anna, and asks her, where is my last son, and she won't tell him, he cuts her fucking thumb off and roughs her up a bit. When Cal catches wind of this, he asks what the hell's going on, she tells him about this prophecy, and he sets out to kill Isaac. Now while all this is going on, we've also got Lieutenant Solomon, played by Thomas Jane. He is the guy who was in charge of the troop of army guys who were killed by Cal and their Gatling gun was taken. So now Solomon is after Cal. So we've got Isaac who's looking for Cal, we've got Solomon who's looking for Cal, we've got Cal who's looking for Isaac. Everybody's just looking for everybody, and by the end of the movie it all comes to a head. So yeah, this is a Western, but it is more or less centered around a prophecy. Now I know all that horse shit I said a second ago sounds really confusing, but it's not. This movie's actually pretty straightforward. This is part of the new wave of Westerns that we're getting, and I'm kind of digging this new wave. Westerns have fallen out of style over the past few decades, but they used to just be the shit, and they are getting a bit of a resurgence over the past few years. I myself, I do enjoy a good Western, and when it comes to The Last Son, I enjoyed this movie. It's got a pretty easy to understand and more importantly easy to get into story, and the characters, while not necessarily the deepest characters in the world, are very interesting and entertaining. The ones that we're supposed to like, we really like. The ones we're supposed to hate, we really fucking hate. Now the movie mainly focuses around the two characters, Isaac and Cal. We see them on their two separate journeys that we know by the end is going to bring them together. Isaac, played by Sam Worthington, which by the way, where the hell's that guy been since Avatar, is a character that seems like there's a whole lot going on with him. We just don't ever get any of it. Like, I wanted to know more about this character, but you don't ever really get that. Why is he doing the things he's doing? Why does he put so much stock into this prophecy? He's heralded as some like legendary badass, and while he definitely walks the walk, you don't really know why. What is it he did in the past that really made him this legend? Now, Worthington's performance as Isaac is actually really good. I honestly didn't even recognize Sam Worthington at first. He's got the whole mountain man beard going on, and the little bit that he does talk in the movie, he's using this really weird voice. But I will say that the guy comes across as really menacing. He does a really good job as this character in this movie. The most interesting thing about this character is that there's a lot about him to dislike, but there are also things about him to like. like. 1 minute in the movie, he's almost like the villain and you really don't like him. And then the next minute, it's almost like he's the main hero. The movie flip-flops back and forth, and it does that with many of the characters. And I really think that the reason that they did that is because no one in this movie is really the hero or the villain. They're pretty much all the heroes and the villains of their own stories. And that would also include Cal. Now, I can't get around it. Cal is played by Coulson Baker, which, as I said a moment ago, is AKA Machine Gun Kelly. Now, honestly, I know the name Machine Gun Kelly, and I've probably heard one of his songs before. I'm sure I have. He's popular, but I don't follow the guy. I don't know anything about his music. I couldn't pick one of his songs out. I don't know if this is the first time he's been in a film, but it's the first time I've seen him in a film. And it's not uncommon for musicians to decide that, hey, today I want to be an actor and go be in a movie, which sometimes works out and other times not so much. Now, regardless of the guy's musical career and what he does in his personal life, like I said, I don't follow him, I don't know. I can say that in this movie, and that's the only way that I can look at it and rate him, but in this movie as Cal, I really liked it. He did a really good job here. Now, much like the character Isaac, Cal seems like there's a lot more going on with this character. There are things you want to know that you're just not gonna get. We do get a bit more from his character than we do Isaac. He speaks more, we find out more about his backstory and why he does the things that he does. But it doesn't really take much because Isaac's character pretty much just walks around grunting and killing people, and Cal just walks around talking a bit more and killing people. Baker's performance as this Billy the Kid-esque character was really entertaining. He, much like Worthington as Isaac, at times is really likable, and at other times he's really unlikable. I will say that his character is probably more unlikable more often than Isaac, but he still does have his moments when you kind of feel for the guy. Now, we've also got Heather Graham and Thomas Jane, and both of them are great, but Thomas Jane probably stands out above the rest. As the white army lieutenant that was raised by Indians, his character has a bit more to work with, but also Jane just kind of brings something to the role, a certain confidence that some actors lack. He brings an air of I know what the fuck I'm doing here to the role. But really, everybody here did a really good job. The performances across the board here are all extremely good. Now, the movie does have some action, especially closer to the end, but the vast majority of this thing is probably a bit more of a slow burn than you're expecting. A lot of it is just these three sets of people all looking for each other and always just barely missing each other, of course, until the end of the movie. The action that we do get, though, is all really well done. There's a decent amount of violence in the movie, but honestly, when it comes to westerns of nowadays, it wasn't as violent as I was expecting. These type of revenge-esque western flicks that we've been getting in the past 10 years or so are typically pretty damn violent when shit goes down. This one, while yeah, we get a little bit of blood, and it can be violent for sure, it's not nearly as brutal as I thought the film was gonna be. And it's not really a knock against the movie, it's got its violent moments, but I did take notice of that. Now, as far as the end of the movie goes, while I'm not going to spoil it, I did have an issue with one thing here. The actual end, what happens, I was okay with. It was a good time, I enjoyed it overall. But there's a thing that happens in the very end of the movie, and what happens here, I didn't really have a problem with. It was how it was all set up throughout the film that had an issue with. We have a character that something happens to in the beginning of the movie, and then we see this character randomly just on a journey throughout the film until they show up again in the end of the movie and have something to do with that. Problem is that when they show up in the end, it's kind of supposed to be a surprise, but due to the way that they show this character throughout the film on their journey, I can't say too much without spoiling it, but due to the way that you see this, me myself, I kind of guessed what was gonna happen in the end way earlier in the film. It's not that the movie told us or anything, but the way that it showed this character on this journey that seemingly had nothing much at all to do with the rest of the movie, that clued me in. There's a couple of other little details you know too prior to this person going on the journey, and then everything else to do with the movie. You figure pretty much all of it out, including the whole ironic twist in the end. I pretty much figured that out as well, and I just wish they had cut that whole journey out. I didn't mind showing the before part in the beginning of the movie, and then when the person shows up and what happens, I was cool with that. I actually kind of liked that. But showing that journey throughout the film just randomly kind of gave it away before we actually got there. Did it ruin the end of the movie? No, the end of the movie was still entertaining and overall pretty satisfying, but it doesn't change the fact that this thing that happened that was supposed to kind of be an ironic twist and kind of a surprise just isn't. That being said, even though I did see it coming from like 5 miles away, it was still overall pretty satisfying and enjoyable. Guys, The Last Son was a pretty entertaining Western revenge-esque thriller. It's a slow burn, but it is a pretty straightforward and easy to get into story that I think a lot of people could have a good time with. While the characters seem like there is more to them, we don't ever really get that. I wouldn't go as far as to say these characters are two-dimensional, but they're not as deep as I would like them to be for sure. The performances are all really good across the board, and even though you do see the end scene coming from a long way away, it was still overall really enjoyable and absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
I really enjoyed this film, even though it did definitely have some shortcomings. But if you can get past those few little things and you enjoy yourself a good Western, then check out The Last Son one night. I think you'll have a pretty good time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of The Last Son. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits that go along with that, like these guys. And possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg C. and Dragon Khan. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Tombstone.
The devil! The devil! The devil! The devil!
Maybe I'm reading into this thing way too much, but there were multiple times throughout the film that the character Cal, played by Machine Gun Kelly, is found to be shooting a machine gun. And it like really focuses on him and the machine gun while he's shooting this thing. Coincidence? Maybe, I don't know, but to me it seemed just a little bit too on the nose.